Hi, everybody. Let's continue our discussion of the body. This is the first of four sections within the chapter dealing with Sharpen the Saw. For this, you're going to need to take out your 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens book, open it up to page 212. This will be covering the material from 212 to 215, so make sure that you've read the chapter and that you're up to speed on things. These video lessons are designed to not take the place of the reading. They're to back up the reading. It's like our in-class discussion. This is something that is not supposed to be just standalone. It backs up the reading. It backs up the assignments that we do. If you're not reading, guys, I'm telling you, this is a short week because of all the testing that's going on. Next week is short. We're doing our best to try to make sure that we can test by next week, and this is probably the longest chapter in the book. Still very readable, still very doable, but my point is we're going to be cramming it into a short amount of time. So you need to read. You need to be watching these videos. You need to be reading when we're in class together. You need to definitely be asking questions, sticking with the discussions, and of course staying on top of all of your material. So please don't fall behind, but take out your 7 Habits book. This is, again, supplementing pages 212 through 215. Last time we left off, we were talking about unrealistic beauty standards and how these unrealistic standards of beauty are marketed at a young age to children. But that's not the only thing about the human body that's marketed to children at that particular age. As a matter of fact, I want you to watch something here. Now, what you're about to see is unedited. This is nothing that I have had any hand in. This is real. This was broadcast, and it was one of many like it. So let me know what you think of this.
They sure work hard, don't they, Barney?
Yeah? I hate to see them work so hard.
Yeah, me too. Let's go around back where we can't see them.
Gee, we ought to do something, Fred.
Okay? How's about taking a nap?
I got a better idea. Let's take a Winston break.
That's it! Winston is the one filter cigarette that delivers flavor 20 times a pack. Winston's got that filter blend.
Yeah, Fred. Filter blend makes the big taste difference, and only Winston has it up front where it counts. Here, ahead of the pure white filter. Winston packs rich tobaccos specially selected and specially processed for good flavor in filter smoking.
Yeah, Barney, Winston tastes good, like a cigarette should.
The Flintstones has been brought to you by Winston, America's best-selling, best-tasting filter cigarette.
Winston tastes good like a cigarette should.
That was a real commercial for Winston cigarettes worked into the Flintstones. The Flintstones cartoon actually was sponsored for quite a while by Winston, and for a while also, I believe Busch Beer sponsored the Flintstones for a while as well. These were how things were advertised. I mean, there were plenty of points where you'd have a comedy show like a sitcom all of a sudden take a break and say, we'll be right back after we discuss Philip Morris cigarettes. And the characters would stop what they're doing to talk about Philip Morris cigarettes or whatever the brand may be. I mean, this is something that, was commonplace in the 20th century. Around the time that I was a kid, more and more studies started coming out about the effects of smoking, and tobacco companies were forced to alter how they advertise. Advertisements still go on. They still do go on. As a matter of fact, millions, something to the tune of about $35 million a day on average that the top tobacco companies are spending in advertisements. Even though they're not allowed to advertise on television anymore, they still find ways to advertise. And there are plenty of ways to get this message out there. And I'm not just saying, oh, well, this was just a one-off and it was a bad decision. Internal documents from cigarette companies around the time that I was a kid, in the 1980s through the 90s, show that the objective was to actually entice children to smoke at a young age. The idea being that if you hook them early enough, you'll have a lifelong customer. That sounds almost made up. It sounds almost like some kind of James Bond villain plot, but this is how it worked. It's why my grandfather started smoking at age 9. And you probably know people who started using tobacco at a young age as well. Maybe the tobacco was cigarettes. Maybe it was one of the many different forms it's in. Maybe chewing tobacco, chaw. I've known only a handful of people to use chaw this day and age. It's like a brick of chewing tobacco, and you bite a plug out of it and chew it and spit it. Very nasty. Pouch tobacco, you've probably seen, or at least some of you know of. Dip, which is a kind of a fine cut, comes in a round circular can. Snooze, which are a variation on snuff tobacco, which is a powdered fine tobacco that you actually used to kind of snort. You would snort the tobacco, but now it comes in a little chewable. There are pouches now that I don't remember what they're called, some little flavor pouch, and it's filled with tobacco, and you stick it in your lip, and it keeps a lot of the detritus residue from the tobacco getting into your teeth. There are countless ways to access the nicotine that's in tobacco. Now, these are all things that are still, even though they're not supposed to be, in a way they're marketed to kids if you know how to look creatively enough. It's nothing to open up kids' Halloween candy. I see this in my own kids' Halloween candy. To find things like candy cigarettes. We used to have those when we were kids. For the pouch tobacco, there's Big League Chew. Big League Chew was marketed because baseball players, back when I was a kid, were allowed to chew tobacco on the field. They'd spit all over the field. It was really nasty. But we kids wanted to emulate the sports heroes we would look up to, and so it would come in a pouch, just like pouch tobacco, and it would be shredded bubble gum that looked like shredded tobacco. And you just pack wads of it in your mouth. There are all kinds of candies nowadays that really show how easy it is to package these in bright, colorful ways that in a lot of instances mimic candy and treats. I mean, if you're a child looking at this, you're not going to have a whole lot of difference in the concept that's there. You may not even be aware of the dangers of tobacco at that particular age. You just know that, hey, here's a product that looks nice and is packaged a lot like the stuff that I like. And here's too another thing: where in convenience stores, where do you see all the advertisements for tobacco? Usually they're on the bottoms of the windows at child eye level. Where do you keep the tobacco products in a store, like a convenience store? You keep it up front by the register, right? Same place where you keep the candy. But now one of the big things that people are getting into, your particular generation, is I'm at least seeing, I don't know the statistics handy, but your generation, I'm seeing more and more starting to leave behind tobacco itself and moving toward vaping, with Juuls and things like that. And it's not a healthy alternative, at least based on the medical studies that we have to date. I mean, by the 1980s, we knew cigarettes were horrible. We knew tobacco was horrible. It's something that yellows your teeth. It's something that can lead to obviously various forms of cancer. And I've known several good friends who have been lost to cancer. It darkens the whites of the eyes, the sclera. It's something that leads to a host of health issues and lung issues. This is something that by the 1980s we knew, but yet still more and more people were doing it, and cigarette companies and tobacco companies in general denied what was there, and even commissioned their own studies to try to show, oh no, it's not unhealthy. It was actually commonplace up until about the 1980s for tobacco companies to hire doctors to use in their advertisement, saying that, yes, this is my brand of cigarette and I recommend it to all my patients. That's a horrible thing. And it's something you can readily find images of online, these actual advertisements. Not only that, you've got cartoon mascots, people like Joe Camel and others. Tobacco usage has some really horrible consequences. I mean, it really, really can do a number on you. And I'm not saying that everyone who uses tobacco is going to die of cancer. But you're looking at an odds game. Everything is statistics, everything's odds. You have a chance of being struck by lightning. So do you go outside or not? You weigh the risks, you take it. You can do things to increase that risk or to decrease that risk. I don't smoke. I don't use tobacco of any form. Never have. I still have a chance of getting cancer. I still have a chance of getting lung cancer. Now, my chance is greatly reduced because I don't smoke. And I can reduce that risk even further by diet and exercise. Or I can increase the risk through using tobacco and things of that nature. It's never zero. Your chances of one thing or the other, one extreme or the other, are never zero. You're just simply increasing your odds or decreasing your odds. You may end up being someone who's lucky. Comedian George Burns was a hilarious guy. Lived to be 100, 101, and was famous for just chain smoking these huge cigars. You may be the exception like he was. But the odds are not in your favor. I'm going to add a couple of things to Google Classroom. I'm going to link to some images and some sites as well that show you what can potentially happen with the use of tobacco. I'm not trying to scare you with these, but you need to be aware of these. You need to know the possibilities, because any decision you make, whether you want to smoke or not, whether you want to engage in any of the activities that we're about to talk on here, it's your choice. But please make it an informed choice. And as your teacher, look, this is your business. It's your life. You have to live with you. I don't. But I would be remiss if I let you go out into the world without trying to inform you of everything that is there. whatever decision you make, please make it an informed decision. One thing you'll be looking at is what can happen through the use of chewing tobacco through dip. I'll be linking to actually a hunting website for that. I'll see if I can find that. Once again, I usually reach out to that website called the Outdoor Texan, I believe it's called, where the guy who runs it, unfortunately, after dipping, ran into squamous cell carcinoma. And you'll see a surgery that was performed on him very similar to that of little Lauren Devaney that we discussed, who had Mobius syndrome. Just telling you right now, if you're squeamish, you may not want to watch it. But I think everybody should at least be aware that it's there. I'll also be putting up some other links to things like looking at a smoker's lung versus healthy set of lungs. It actually turns the lung tissue black because we're talking about particulates getting into the lungs. As a matter of fact, instead of linking to a site, why don't I just show you a picture right now? Now these photos are not manipulated. Whenever you are breathing in smoke, it goes to your lungs. Your lungs operate kind of like a filter in a way. The tissue of the lungs operates kind of like a filter and tries to catch any particulates that are in the air that it breathes before they make it into the bloodstream, trying to get anything out of there that's not supposed to be in there. Well, when you're breathing in smoke, that is just filled with these carcinogenic particulates that will lodge into the lung tissue. And over time, it actually discolors the lung tissue and turns it black. Black lung is an actual medical condition. A lot of people think whenever I show them this that I'm making this up, that I manipulated the photos. Black lung's a real thing. It's not pretty, but it's what we're sometimes willing to do ourselves. Now, earlier I mentioned that a lot of your generation are moving toward vaping, and that's supposed to be the thing about vaping is, oh, it's basically water vapor. Yeah, and a host of other things. What goes into those little flavor packets, you're still getting these fine particulates that you're inhaling into your body. The problem with these particulates that you're inhaling through the flavoring, they're a lot smaller in size. That doesn't mean that they pass through the lungs into the bloodstream. By and large, what we see happening in at least initial medical studies is that these particulates, in a lot of cases, are lodging much deeper into lung tissue, which could potentially cause the same sorts of issues that smokers see. And that's exactly what the early tests are showing. There haven't been any long-term tests because smoking tobacco had been around for hundreds of years by the time that we reached the 1980s. Medical studies had been around for decades by the time we reached the 1980s. There have not been any long-term medical studies for vaping because vaping is a relatively new phenomenon. There haven't been these studies to see what, people who are vaping, what the effect is over 50 years' time or so. However, the short-range tests that are being done, one of the first studies that was done was actually conducted by LSU Health Sciences Center, and they found that the health complications of vaping are the same or worse for those of smoking. They saw identical number of days missed due to respiratory issues, same instances of doctor's visits due to respiratory issues, same lung sounds. I mean, we're seeing a group of people, and it's your generation, unfortunately, that is largely looking at vaping saying, oh, well, this is a healthy alternative because it's clean and it doesn't make smoke. No, you're still inhaling stuff into your lungs that doesn't need to be in your lungs. That's not good for you. This is horrible for you. And what I'm getting at with all of this is you have a choice We mentioned this with the first lesson on the body. You have a choice to operate your body like a well-oiled machine and take care of it. It's going to take care of you. Or you can do things to tear down that body. One of the things that is absolutely the worst, or one of the worst things that you could possibly do for the human body, is to engage in unhealthy behavior that forms an addiction. Whether we're talking about addiction to tobacco, alcohol addiction is another one. And I know I've got a fair number of students who drink. I've got some who brag about it. This is not good. I'm telling you right now, as someone who used to drink, I'm glad it's out of my life. There's nothing good health-wise that comes from this, let alone what effects this has on your relationship. I mean, just for health, alcohol is involved in the 3 top killers for your particular age group: vehicular motor accidents, suicide, and accidents, just general accidents. Those 3 are definitely affected by alcohol consumption. I mean, they're major factors. And to ignore that, I think, is foolish. I'm going to say this, you may think that you're not affecting your body when you drink. Not only are you killing brain cells, you're harming your liver. You're creating other long-term effects. And I've had students this year brag about how well they drive drunk. Every year I have students brag this. You don't drive well drunk. I'm going to tell you right now, you do not drive well drunk. You think you do. And I can hear people right now, oh no, Mr. Reed, you don't understand. When I drink, I'm so much more careful. Yeah, and when I used to drink, I was the most handsome, amazing guy in the entire room, and every woman there wanted me. I was basically 10 foot tall and bulletproof. Or I could have just been, inebriated and thinking that I was better than what was the reality that everybody else was seeing. If you are intoxicated, do not drive. You're not a better driver. You think you are. You may think a lot of stupid stuff when you're drinking, but you're not a better driver. I showed you in the last video my baby, Jude. He just turned 1 over this last weekend. And on nights when he can't sleep, I load him up in the car. We go riding around. That puts him right to sleep. When you go out drinking, if you get behind the wheel, that's fine. If you don't care about you and what happens to you, I get it. You don't even have to care about what happens to me. Please don't do something that could potentially take my baby from me or somebody else's baby from them. Because that's what you're doing. It's incredibly irresponsible. It's potentially harmful. It's potentially deadly to innocent people. Don't do that. Don't do that at all, please. There are other addictive substances that can come about. And I could go all day about the different addictive substances that exist. I'll post some links into Google Classroom so you could do some of the fishing yourself on some of this. But I do want you to use these links, because one of the things that I want to do is I want to cut through the minutia. I want to cut through all the hearsay. Everybody seems to be an expert on whatever their vice is. Oh yeah, I've been using this drug, and so oh yeah, it's healthy for you, it's good for you, because everyone wants to explain away why their particular vice, their particular bad thing that they do is really good if you stop and think about it. Hint, it's not. You may think it is. You may rationalize it away, Your cousin's brother's friend on Facebook may have posted a really authoritative looking meme about it that seemed like it knew what it was talking about. That doesn't mean you have all the facts. I mean, there are some things that I hear people say all the time, like smoking marijuana. I don't use marijuana. I've never used marijuana. I've had it offered to me multiple times. I don't care about it. I don't want it. I have no need for it in my life. But it's something that also does have health risks. And I know what the majority of people are going to argue. I've been through these arguments with people time and time and time and time again. And I've heard it all. I've heard people say, oh, well, it cures cancer. No, it doesn't. If it cured cancer, I'd grow the stuff and I'd give it out for free. It does not cure cancer. Marijuana lessens some of the pain associated with chemotherapy and some of the nausea associated with chemotherapy in some patients, not all. Marijuana is, and you hear people say, oh, well, I think it ought to be for medical reasons. Okay, are you arguing that you want it for medical reasons? Or are you arguing it should be made legal everywhere for medical reasons because, again, you're just wanting to validate your vice? You don't need it for medical reasons, but you just want it to be more readily available. That's usually the slant that people take. People will say, oh, it's natural, it's all good for you, it's from a plant. Tobacco's from a plant. Arsenic is from a plant. There are lots of things that are natural. Bird crap is natural. Rocks are natural. I don't want them in my body. Okay? People say, oh, well, it's so much healthier for you than smoking a cigarette. Actually, that's not entirely true. Yes, is it healthier because there are fewer carcinogens in a marijuana leaf versus a tobacco leaf? Sure. Fewer doesn't mean zero. Just means less. Doesn't mean that it's absent of it. Because remember, those particulates we were talking about that get into your lungs, it doesn't really matter what you're breathing in. Your lungs aren't sitting there trying to figure out, okay, is this good smoke? Is this bad smoke? No, smoke is smoke is smoke is smoke is smoke. You are inhaling these particulates. You are inhaling these chemicals into your body that you don't need to have in there. I don't care if you're smoking tobacco. I don't care if you're smoking marijuana. I don't care if you're standing over a brush fire. I don't care if it's a house fire. Smoke is smoke. Why do you think firefighters have to be treated for smoke inhalation whenever they are exposed to smoke for long periods of time, putting out house fires? What, wood burning is not all natural? The smoke doesn't need to be in your lungs of any form. Then you get people saying, oh, well, what about edibles? What about this? What about that? Okay, fine. Marijuana also increases your heart rate by up to 3 times for up to 5 hours after its use. You may think it slows you down, but the reality of it is it's probably affecting you more like a slow motion camera. The reason why slow motion cameras show slow motion is because they're rapidly putting the film through there. It's actually running at a much faster speed than what regular film runs through a camera. If you don't believe me on any of this, that's fine. Like I said, I will put information online so you can go and look for this yourself. And I'm going to put it through authoritative websites that are using multiple lines of studies that have been used again and again. You don't have to believe me. Go to the sources. I told you day one of this class, don't take my word for it. Instead, investigate it yourself. Find out what the truth really is. Think critically and be informed. Again, it's your decision. Make an informed decision. I will say this. I've known quite a number of people who are addicts, who are addicted to cocaine. I've known people who've been using meth. I know people who, if you can name a drug, I've probably known somebody who at least tried it, if not was addicted to it. Every single one of them. And I know people say, well, statistically, this isn't the case. And I get that. What I'm saying may be purely anecdotal. But every one of them, every single addict that I know, and I've known quite a few, every single one of them started with marijuana. I do believe it can be a gateway to other drugs. I mean, I get students coming to me every year to talk with me about their addictions. Some of them really wrestle with these things. And it's stuff that typically starts young. Nobody intends to become an addict. Nobody intends to be a junkie. Nobody intends to, that's the insidious nature of addiction, actually, is that addiction is not something that's instant. It's deceptive. This is actually something that's talked about on your study guide. You need to be updating your study guide. Addiction is something that usually is gradual and takes place over time. In most cases. It's really rare to actually find a drug that just instantly hooks you. I have a friend who's a recovering addict, and he told me about drugs. He said, when we were kids, they used to always play these specials on Sundays or Saturdays about, anti-drug use, and you have all these commercials for anti-drug use and how terrible you'd end up. He said, drugs are awesome. He said, they make me feel amazing, make me feel wonderful. He said, and that's the problem. He started out when he was in high school, going to some parties, was offered pot. He looked around, people he knew were using it. These were people he liked. He didn't think anything of it. And so he said, well, I'll try it. Because, look at them. They're popular. They're fun people. Nothing bad has happened to them. He tried it. And he said the next morning, he woke up in his own bed, in his house. He was fine. It wasn't like on the TV. It wasn't, an instant. It wasn't like reefer madness or anything like that. He wasn't, lying in an alleyway with a needle sticking out of his arm. He was fine. And he got up and went about his day. It just made him feel good for a time. So the next time he was at a party, he tried it again. It was great then too. And again, and again. And it got to where he would always use it with these people. He got to doing that so much that, he wanted to get some of his own, so he started buying it himself. After he started buying it, he thought, I could probably make a little money, so he started selling it. But the more he used it, the less of an impact it really had on him. And these same people were into other things, so he started trying other things. He started snorting cocaine. Moved on from there to methamphetamine. Moved on from there to, just trying to find whatever that new good high was going to be. He told me, he said, this was back during the 80s, I guess, probably late 80s, early 90s. That was when the AIDS epidemic first became a thing, and everybody was kind of paranoid about needles because one of the ways that you can transmit HIV is through sharing drug needles. And he said, man, I was just terrified of needles. He said, but if I could get a drug into my body, I would do it. He said, it didn't matter how it got in me. He said, as long as it wasn't a needle, he said, if I could get it any other way, I'd do it. If I could swallow it, snort it, smoke it, whatever. And that was how he lived his life for a while. Then he got to smoking up all his product, not making anything off of sales, so he started trying to pay for his habits in other ways. These really aren't habits. Of course, he didn't know they weren't. These were addictions. But he started breaking into people's houses and like stealing their TVs and stuff like that to help pay for what he was doing, taking money off people. He told me it was 7 years into hardcore everyday drug use before he finally asked himself, do I have a problem? That wasn't when he stopped. That was just the first point where he asked himself, could I be an addict? Maybe. Some years later, his wife, who had recovered from being a user, whenever she got pregnant, was at home with their baby, maybe 3 years old, 4 years old at the time, something like that. I guess 3. And the two of them were outside the house. He was slumped down underneath the open window, and you couldn't see his head from the window pane. The window was open, and you could hear them outside. They didn't know that he was in the room. And the little girl, his daughter, wanted to go for a walk. She said, "Go walk?" And Mommy said, "Yeah, baby, we'll go for a walk." And she said, "Daddy, come too?" And his wife said to the little girl, "No, sweetie, Daddy can't come where we're going." She didn't mean it, on a deeper level, but for him, hearing that, that's when he realized he was not going to end his life in the same place that his family would. That he would die well before them and die alone. And that was a pretty harsh thing for him to realize. But I mean, he had lost jobs over it. He had lost friendships. He was on the verge of losing his family over it. He had become just a cancer for his own life. And I choose those words intentionally because that's actually what one of his bosses had told him upon firing him, was that he was a cancer and that he needed to be cut out. Finally, one day he decided to commit suicide. And the way that he was going to do it was he was going to get in the family's white Suburban and drive to the river and basically just gun it and drive off into the river and drown himself, which is a horrible way to go. But that's what he decided to do. He drove around, he said, for the longest time, never really paying attention to direction, just driving around, just thinking, just lost in thought. And he put the car in park. He wasn't paying attention to where he was or where he was going. He just put the car in park when he reached a parking space because he thought he had gone to the river. And he looked up and he was actually in a church parking lot. He just started just weeping openly, and that was when he realized he had to get help. He had to get help. I'm not going to mention the friend's name. He's actually well known here in this town. He's kind of become a religious leader in this town who's fairly well known, and it's not that he keeps this story secret. It's not. He's told it to quite a number of people, but just out of respect for him and his family at this time, I'm just not going to mention the name. But this is something that I've seen. It's not unique. It's not a one-off. I've seen plenty of people in situations like that, and that's the nature of addiction. It's an insidious thing. It's kind of like what Sean Covey calls the fried frog experiment. Now, it's really more of a boiled frog experiment, but how do you boil a frog? How do you boil a frog? I mean, a live frog that does not want to be boiled. How do you make him stay in the pot if you don't have a lid? You can hold a frog over boiling water. He feels the heat. So, big change in temperature. He tries to get away. But frogs are cold-blooded. That means that their internal body temperature will slowly change to match the exact temperature of the surroundings. So I can take that same frog and I can set him in a pot of room temperature water and set that on the stove, and he's perfectly content. He's the same temperature as the water around him, and I can slowly turn up the heat underneath that pot. And as the temperature slowly starts to increase, his body temperature will slowly start to increase to match that. It starts getting hot, but he doesn't notice a difference because his body temperature is the same temperature as the water around him. He's not feeling a difference. He'll stay right there perfectly contented until the water starts to boil. He will boil to death before he ever starts to feel warm. I mean, that sounds kind of grotesque, but that's addiction. The frog will boil to death before he ever realizes he's warm. The user will become addicted long before they ever realize that they are an addict. Addiction is gradual. It is a step-by-step process that slowly internalizes these changes in the human body to where you don't realize how badly you need it. I got pretty close to it with my own drinking. I was never an alcoholic. I was what you would call a binge drinker. When I would drink massive amounts of alcohol. It was rare that I would drink, but when I did, I would drink a lot. And, drinking, once every 6 months became once every other month. Slowly over time, once every other month became once a month. Once a month became twice a month. Twice a month became once a week. Slowly over time, once a week became every other day. Every other day started to become every day. And I around the time that this started happening with me, members of my own family started coming to terms with their own alcohol abuse and started going to Alcoholics Anonymous because they admitted that they were alcoholic. Members of my own family. And they had crossed that point. They were alcoholic. And they did need help. And I remember one night I was preparing dinner and I got down a bottle of my favorite wine, and I had every intention of drinking the entire bottle that evening with dinner. Because that is what I normally did. I would drink at least a bottle of wine. And as I got it down, my wife looked at me and said, "I can't believe you're doing that." And it was one of those things that the tone she said it was that instant kind of, "Oh, we're picking a fight? Is that what we're doing? We're going to fight tonight? Okay, okay, what? You can't believe I'm doing what? I can't believe you're drinking that." "All right, I'll bite. Why not?" She said, "After everything that's gone on with your family, after, the pain and the suffering that it's caused." And I got really irritated by this. And I said, "Look, they can't handle their alcohol. I can. I don't have a problem. They do. I will be supportive of them. I will tell them that I'm proud of them. I won't drink when they're around. But I don't have to change me because I don't have a problem." She said something that I'd never thought of it in this light before. She said, "What if it wasn't a substance?" I said, "Do what?" She said, "What if it wasn't alcohol? What if this was a person? What if this was a person?" I said, "What do you mean if it was a person? I'm just having a bottle of wine with dinner." She said, "Exactly. What if this was a person who had ruined the lives of people that you love, who had hurt so many people that are close to you, who had done all these terrible things, hurt your family, and you'd still have this person over for dinner?" I never really thought about it like that. She has a way of being right that really annoys me. But I looked at her and I was just irritated. And I said, fine. You know what? I won't have the wine. I won't have it tonight. I'll put it back. While they're going through their deal with A&A, with AA, I won't drink. How about that? Will that make you happy? She said, do whatever you want. So, fine. Put it on top of the refrigerator. Left it. And about 3 days later, I felt something I had never realized feeling before. And that was a craving. It was a craving for alcohol. And if you've ever been addicted to alcohol, and I do have some students who have been and some who probably are, if you've ever been addicted to alcohol, you know what I'm talking about. I wanted that bottle. I had a deep, just like under your ribs kind of craving for it. I wanted it so badly. And I got terrified because I realized what that was. That was addiction forming. I got awfully close to the cliff and I never realized the cliff was there. I almost went over it. So I said, you know what? I got to make sure that this is not something that happens to me. So I left the bottle of wine on top of the refrigerator. I wanted to face it. Every day, I would see the bottle of wine on top of the refrigerator. I wanted it to be where I would see it. Because every day I would think about it. And there were some days that were easier than others. Some nights, actually, I would get up in the middle of the night and I would go stare at the top of the refrigerator. I'd stare at the bottle of wine, and a couple times I got it down and I got my hand right there on the cork, and I almost, but I never opened it. And this went on for, I don't know how long, months, I guess, a couple of months, until finally I realized one day when I woke up, I said, wait a minute. I didn't look at the bottle of wine yesterday. I didn't even notice it. I didn't think about it at all. That's when I knew I had won. That's when I knew I had the upper hand, because now it was something I didn't have to consider. Do I still get cravings for it? Every now and again, yeah. If I'm honest, sure. But I've not had anything to drink since 2008. Don't ever plan on doing it again, because I don't need that in my life. I've got better things. When you stop leaning on crutches that get you through dark periods or that provide you with these temporary happinesses, you can discover things in your life that really do make you truly happy on a more permanent basis. I've got kids now. Man, I love being a dad. There's no drink, there's no drug that can compare with being a dad. Or marrying the person you love. Or getting to even hang out with these goofy cats that you're probably hearing just run through the house here in the middle of the night because, are you pretending you're Lightning McQueen? Is that what it is? Are you Speed? Give me a ka-chow. How about a ka-chow? Come on, can I have just one ka-chow? You are the worst. When it comes, though, to addiction, you need to understand you don't have to go along with this. You don't have to keep living like this, and you don't have to view this as inevitable either. As a matter of fact, a lot fewer people are doing things of this nature than you probably realize. And like we've talked about in this book time and time again, you have the ability to be an agent of change. If you need help, use the resources in the back of the book. Talk with me, talk with someone you trust. Get help to change these things. And also for the future, start exercising what's known as the refusal skill. If you'll look in your book on page 214 and page 215, you'll see the 5 steps of the refusal skill. This is something you need to know for the test. First thing is to ask questions. What would make me want to do this? Why do I want to do this? What'll happen if I do this? Name the trouble is the second one. Okay? Call it what it is. Say what it is. Okay, drugs are illegal. Smoking is going to make my breath stink. You're actually putting the truth of what it is to hear it, which is why I want you to look at some actual studies of some of this material and see what it does for your health. Stating the consequences. Okay, well, think through these consequences. Think through what's going to happen as a result of your actions. What happens if I get arrested and I've got this stuff on me? What happens if a cop stops me? What happens if somebody takes advantage of me because I got wasted tonight and I couldn't defend myself? The fourth thing, suggest an alternative. Hey guys, instead of doing that, come on, let's do this instead. Let's not do that tonight. Let's go do this. Why don't we go see a movie instead? Why don't we do this? That may work. It may not. But it's worth a shot. The fifth step is the takeoff. This is where if you still can't change the situation, if it doesn't look good, get out of there. Because you're making a smarter move. Just tell people, hey, look, I'm sorry, I gotta go. You don't want to be there for that. Because the alternatives, what are the alternatives? I had some friends who were renting a house one time, and I knew they used drugs. Went over to their house the day before. Cops had made a raid on 2 or 3 houses in that neighborhood, like the house right next to them, right across the street, and another one like 2 doors down. And I go over to their place, and I come on inside, and I sit down on the couch, and I feel something in between the couch cushions as I put my hand down as I go to sit down. I'm like, that would be a crack pipe. And if the cops would have come in for another raid, guess who was going to big boy jail for a long while? And I wouldn't have even done anything. Sometimes you have to leave a situation. Sometimes you need to get out of there. And it's okay for you to decide that, no, this isn't for me. It's okay for you to decide what your own life is going to be. Those other people don't have to live with you. They don't have to live with your choices. You do. So you need to ask yourself, are you doing the right thing? Nancy Reagan in the 80s used to say, well, just say no. It's a little harder than just saying no. That's why we use the refusal skill. That's why this is a process to help get you through this. But you don't need this stuff in your life. You don't need something to dull your senses, to take you out of life. This is the greatest adventure I could ever imagine, is life itself. And I only have my own senses to help me judge it and to help me go by it, to help me make sense of it. And if those are taken from me, I have nothing to help me perceive this, to help me enjoy this. Those things aren't living life to the fullest. They're a waste of life. They're putting life on hold for a time so you can disconnect. Don't do that. Live life, enjoy life. Julia Child. If you ever saw her, she was a very large woman who spoke like this, and she did French cooking. She was a brilliant chef, big woman, built like an absolute linebacker. She was great, though. She once said that life itself is the proper binge. You don't need to experiment with drugs. You know what the results are going to be. If you know what the results are, it's not an experiment, okay? That makes no sense. And a short-term feel-good is not worth long-term devastation. Life itself is enjoyable. Life itself is a good thing. So lean on it, not some crutch, and enjoy it. Live it to the fullest. And that wraps up our discussion with the body. Now, we're going to next be covering the mind. The majority of that, if not all of that, we're going to try to do in class for Wednesday of this week. Thursday, we're out again due to testing. Expect to get, if anything that we don't cover from the brain, on one of these video lessons. The rest of it will be, you're looking at the heart, the emotional component. And then Friday, that should leave us to cover the spiritual dimension, the soul. Now, make sure you are up to date on things. I've just put a new assignment and a bunch of material to back up these video lessons onto Google Classroom. So do not forget to check it. Do not neglect this stuff. It's there for a reason. Make the most of it. You'll do fine. Till next time.
What makes a great chef? Well, training and technique, of course, plus a great love of food, a generous personality, and the ability to invent hot chocolate truffles. Meltingly addictive hot chocolate truffles. Balls of creamy chocolate filling that are rolled in fresh crumbs. Let's have another piece. As long as the dough is relaxed, it's ready to roll. Ready to roll. Let's have another piece. All in a ball. Ready to roll. Ready to roll. Freshness is essential. That makes all the difference. I like to smell something cookies. Makes me feel it. Bring on the roasted potatoes. Bring on the borscht. This is what good cooking is all about. This is what good cooking is all about. Like sour cream cheese filling and the sweet topping, all on that crisp pastry. You can't define these in a recipe. You can only know them. By knowing how the food should taste. The blend of oil, fresh lime juice, fresh ginger, and fish sauce. You need some fat in your diet, or your body can't process your vitamins. Freshness is essential. That makes all the difference. I like to smell something cookies. Makes me feel it. Bring on the roasted potatoes. Bring on the borscht. This is what good cooking is all about. This is what good cooking is all about. Cook and keep on cooking. This is the way to live. Cook and keep on cooking. This is the way to eat. Bon appetit. Real test of a good chef is a perfectly roasted chicken. The lemons, the garlic, the rosemary, butter-free, rosemary, full, rich and creamy, suspended in its sauce. You have to watch it. Don't let it cook too long. Beat it up a little bit, just to soften it. Fast and tough and rough. And it's gonna show you how you do it. Beat it up a little bit, just to soften it. Chop it, hold it, roll it, chop it, fast and tough and rough. Freshness is essential. That makes all the difference. I like to smell something cookies. Makes me feel it. Bring on the roasted potatoes. Bring on the borscht. This is what good cooking is all about. This is what good cooking is all about. Cook and keep on cooking. This is the way to live. Cook and keep on cooking. Everyone gather around the dinner table. Cook and keep on cooking. This is the way to live. Cook and keep on cooking. This is the way to eat. Bon appetit.